The cargo bay of the Zalithian transport ship hummed with nervous energy as various alien species clustered together, whispering in hushed tones. Most were traders, diplomats, and researchers bound for the neutral station of Kepler's Rest. But today's passenger manifest included something unusual, a representative from the recently discovered world called Earth. Captain Vexhai, a towering chronothan with scales that shifted from deep blue to worried purple, stood near the observation deck watching his passengers. His 4 eyes tracked the movements of the human female who sat alone in the corner, seemingly unbothered by the stares and whispers directed her way. She was smaller than most species aboard the ship, standing perhaps 5.5 feet tall, with dark hair pulled back in a simple tail and wearing what appeared to be primitive leather and cloth garments. What struck the captain most was her stillness. She didn't fidget, didn't constantly check communication devices like other species, didn't even seem to blink as often as normal. She just sat there, occasionally taking slow sips from a metal container, her green eyes calmly observing everything around her. "Captain," came the chittering voice of his first officer, Zeklin, a insectoid Vorthak. "The passengers are becoming increasingly agitated about the human. Perhaps we should explain the safety protocols again." Vexhai's scales rippled with uncertainty. "What exactly would we tell them, Zeklin? That we've tested her for diseases and weapons? That she's passed all standard diplomatic health screenings? That somehow doesn't seem to address their real concerns." The captain was right to be concerned. Ever since the Galactic Council had made first contact with Earth 6 months ago, disturbing reports had been filtering through the interstellar community. Earth, it seemed, was a death world, a planet so hostile and dangerous that it had forged its dominant species into something truly terrifying. Near the refreshment station, a group of Melonian traders were engaged in animated discussion, their soft, furry bodies trembling slightly as they spoke. "My cousin works in the xenobiology department," whispered Yilnara, her large, dark eyes darting toward the human. "She said the initial reports from Earth are classified, but she heard fragments. The whole planet is covered in apex predators." "Apex predators?" asked her companion. Tornash, his ears flattening against his skull. "What kind of apex predators?" "Everything!" Yilnara's voice rose to a squeak before she caught herself and lowered it again. "The oceans have creatures that can grow to 30 meters and hunt in coordinated packs. The land has massive carnivores with teeth like daggers and jaws that can crush metal. Even the plants are predatory. Some can move and consume creatures whole." Tornash shuddered, his fur standing on end. "And the humans live among all this?" "Not just live among it," interjected a new voice. A tall, thin Andromedian named Zeltarek had approached their group, his pale skin almost translucent with fear. "According to the preliminary reports, humans are the dominant species. They've conquered their entire planet." The Melonians exchanged horrified glances. The idea of any species conquering a death world was almost incomprehensible. Most civilized species had evolved on peaceful worlds, developing technology and culture in harmony with their environments. The concept of a planet where everything was actively trying to kill you was the stuff of nightmares. "But look at her," Tornash said, gesturing carefully toward the human. "She's so small, so soft. No natural weapons, no armor, no obvious predatory adaptations. How could something like that survive on such a world, let alone dominate it?" This was the question that had been puzzling xenobiologists across the galaxy. Humans appeared to be persistence hunters at best, bipedal mammals with relatively weak bite force, no natural armor, claws that were more like blunt stubs, and reaction times that seemed average compared to most species. Yet somehow, they had not only survived on their death world, but had thrived to the point of achieving spaceflight. Dr. Quintal, a renowned Zeridian xenobiologist who was traveling to Kepler's Rest for a conference, had been listening to the conversations with growing interest. Unlike the others, his scientific curiosity was overriding his fear. He approached the human's seating area, clearing his throat politely. "Excuse me," he said in carefully pronounced Galactic Standard. "I am Dr. Quintal of the Zeridian Institute of Xenobiology. Might I ask you a few questions about your homeworld?" The human looked up at him, and Quintal immediately noticed several things that hadn't been apparent from a distance. Her eyes moved constantly, tracking every movement in her peripheral vision without turning her head. When she smiled, he glimpsed teeth that, while small compared to obvious predators, were notably sharp and well-maintained. Most unsettling, when she focused on him directly, he felt an inexplicable urge to step backward. "Sure," she said, her voice carrying an odd quality that seemed both friendly and somehow predatory. "I'm Sarah Chen. What would you like to know, Doctor?" "Well, I've been studying the preliminary reports about Earth, and I must admit, I'm fascinated by your planet's ecosystem. The reports mention that your world has many apex predators. Could you tell me about the most dangerous one?" Sarah's smile widened slightly, and several nearby conversations stopped as other passengers strained to listen. "That's an interesting question," she said, leaning back in her chair. "I suppose it depends on how you define dangerous. We have great white sharks that can bite through steel cables. We have saltwater crocodiles that can remain motionless for hours before striking with enough force to crush bone. We have polar bears that can track prey for hundreds of miles across frozen wasteland." The listening passengers grew increasingly pale or equivalent as she continued. "Then there are the big cats. Tigers that can leap 4 meters vertically, lions that hunt in coordinated groups, leopards that can drag prey twice their body weight up trees. We have pack hunters like wolves that can pursue prey for days without rest, and we have ambush predators like pythons that can crush the life out of something 3 times their size." Dr. Quintal's note-taking device was working frantically. "Fascinating. And these creatures all share the same planet? How do humans avoid them?" "Oh, we don't avoid them," Sarah said casually. "We hunt them." The statement sent a ripple of shocked silence through the nearby passengers. A Melonian dropped his drink container, the metallic clang echoing in the sudden quiet. "You hunt them?" Dr. Quintal stammered. "But surely you mean with advanced technology, weaponry, vehicles?" Sarah shook her head. "Sometimes, but humans have been hunting Earth's apex predators for thousands of years, long before we had advanced technology. We used to hunt mammoths with nothing but sharpened sticks and teamwork. We've killed great whites with harpoons thrown by hand. Some of our people still hunt big game with primitive weapons, just for the challenge." The gathered aliens were now openly staring, their expressions ranging from disbelief to horror. Captain Vexhai had abandoned his post entirely and moved closer to listen. "But if your planet has so many dangerous predators," asked Yilnara, her voice barely above a whisper, "what would you consider the most dangerous? The apex hunter of Earth?" Sarah considered the question for a moment, her green eyes scanning the faces of her alien audience. Then, slowly, her smile returned. Not the friendly expression from before, but something that made every evolutionary alarm in the watching aliens' brains start screaming. She reached up and tapped her chest, right over her heart. "You're looking at her." The silence that followed was deafening. Every passenger within hearing distance froze, their minds trying to process what they'd just heard. The small, seemingly harmless human had just claimed to be the apex predator of a death world filled with creatures that could crush steel and hunt for days without rest. Dr. Quintal's note-taking device slipped from nerveless fingers and clattered to the floor. That's impossible," he whispered. "You have no natural weapons, no armor, no obvious predatory adaptations." Sarah's expression grew thoughtful, almost pitying. "Doctor, you're thinking like prey," she said gently. "You're looking for fangs and claws and armor because that's what you expect predators to have. But what makes humans the apex predators of Earth isn't what we're born with. It's what we do with what we have." She stood up slowly, and despite her small stature, every alien in the vicinity took an involuntary step backward. "We're endurance hunters, Doctor. We can run for hours without stopping, tracking prey across continents. We're tool users. We can turn any object into a weapon. We're social hunters who communicate and coordinate in ways that would make wolf packs jealous. But most importantly," she paused, her green eyes sweeping across the crowd of aliens, "we never give up, ever. When a lion is tired, it sleeps. When a shark is full, it stops hunting. But humans? We hunt things to extinction just because they annoyed us. We've turned murder into an art form and warfare into a science. We've created weapons that can kill from beyond the horizon and strategies that can topple civilizations." The cargo bay had fallen completely silent except for the soft hum of the ship's engines. "On Earth," Sarah continued, her voice carrying easily in the quiet space, "everything else is designed by evolution to be good at one thing. Sharks are perfect swimmers, eagles are perfect flyers, cheetahs are perfect runners. But humans? We're not perfect at anything." She smiled again, and this time every alien present felt their fight-or-flight responses activating. "We're just good enough at everything to be absolutely terrifying." Captain Vexhai felt his scales shift to deep purple, the chronothan equivalent of going pale. In all his years of interstellar travel, he had never encountered anything that generated such an instinctive fear response. The human wasn't threatening them. She was simply explaining, in calm, reasonable terms, why she was the most dangerous thing in the room. "The reports mentioned that Earth has many large predators," Dr. Quintal managed to say, his scientific curiosity barely overriding his terror. "Surely size matters in determining the apex predator." Sarah laughed, a sound that was somehow both musical and terrifying. "Size? Doctor, let me tell you about humanity's relationship with size. We've hunted blue whales, the largest animals that have ever lived on Earth. We've driven saber-toothed cats to extinction. We've made weapons that can kill creatures 100 times our size." She gestured toward the viewing port, where stars wheeled slowly past. "But here's the thing that really makes humans special. Those other predators? They hunt for food, for territory, for mates. Understandable reasons. Humans hunt for sport, for trophies, for fun." The alien passengers exchanged horrified glances. The concept of killing for entertainment was alien to most galactic species, which had evolved beyond such behavior eons ago. "We've created entire industries around killing things," Sarah continued conversationally. "We have competitions to see who can kill the most, the biggest, the most dangerous. We've made art out of the remains of our prey and stories out of our hunts." She sat back down, but somehow the casual movement seemed more threatening than any aggressive posture. "So when you ask about the apex predator of Earth, you have to understand, it's not the biggest or the strongest or the fastest. It's the one that all the others fear. And on Earth, everything fears humans. Even the things that can kill us know that we'll never stop hunting them, never stop finding new ways to destroy them." The cargo bay remained silent for a long moment as the aliens processed this information. Finally, Zeltarek spoke up, his voice shaking. "But surely the galactic community has nothing to fear from humanity? I mean, you seem civilized." Sarah's expression grew amused. "Oh, we're very civilized now. We've learned to channel our hunting instincts into other areas. We hunt knowledge, we hunt solutions to problems, we hunt ways to improve ourselves. But Dr." She looked directly at Dr. Quintal, who felt like a small prey animal pinned by a predator's gaze. "Never forget that civilization is just a thin layer over millions of years of evolution. And when that layer gets stripped away, when we're threatened, when we're cornered, when someone hurts the things we care about, well, that's when the galaxy will learn why Earth's apex predator doesn't need fangs or claws. As if on cue, the ship's communication system crackled to life. "Attention, passengers!" came the captain's voice, though Vexhai was standing right there in the cargo bay. "We are approaching Kepler's rest station. Please prepare for docking procedures." The announcement broke the spell that had fallen over the gathering, and aliens began to slowly disperse, casting nervous glances back at the human who had just casually explained why she was the most dangerous thing most of them would ever encounter. Sarah Chen settled back in her chair and returned to her quiet observation of her surroundings, seemingly unaware of the profound impact her words had had. But as she lifted her drink container to her lips, several of the nearest aliens noticed something that made their blood run cold. She was smiling. Kepler's rest station hung in the void between systems like a massive metal flower, its docking arms extending to embrace incoming ships from across the galaxy. The station served as a neutral meeting ground where dozens of species could trade, negotiate, and conduct business without the political complications of planetary governments. Sarah Chen stood at the observation deck as their transport approached the station, watching the intricate dance of ships moving in and out of docking bays. Despite the conversations from the cargo bay, most passengers still gave her a wide berth, though she noticed Dr. Quintal occasionally stealing glances at her while frantically making notes on his pad. "Impressive," she said quietly, though her comment was overheard by a nervous-looking Vorthak merchant named Tixal. "You find our station impressive?" he asked, his mandibles clicking with what she assumed was pride. "It houses over 2 million beings from 47 different species." Sarah nodded politely. "It's beautiful, very efficient design, though I notice the security seems minimal." Tixal's mandibles stopped clicking. "Minimal? But we have the most advanced peacekeeping systems in the sector. Automated defense grids, scanning arrays, containment fields. All technological solutions," Sarah observed. "What happens when the technology fails?" Before Tixal could answer, the ship's docking sequence completed with a series of metallic clangs and hisses. Captain Vexhai's voice echoed through the transport. "All passengers prepare for disembarkation. Welcome to Kepler's Rest." The transfer to the station proceeded smoothly, with passengers flowing through decontamination chambers and customs checkpoints. Sarah noticed the security officers, mostly Andromedians with their tall, thin builds and pale skin, scanning each passenger with various devices while maintaining what they probably thought was professional detachment. She could see in their body language that they were nervous about her presence, though they tried to hide it. "Purpose of visit?" asked the customs officer, a particularly tall Andromedian whose name tag read, "Inspector Velnari." "Cultural exchange," Sarah replied, offering her documentation. "I'm here to meet with the Galactic Council's Xenocultural Committee." Velnari's pale eyes scanned her papers while additional sensors swept over her body. Sarah knew they would find nothing dangerous. She had deliberately left all obvious weapons behind for this trip. The most dangerous thing she carried was her mind, and no scanner had been invented that could detect that. "Any biological samples, weapons, or restricted technology?" the inspector asked routine. "No weapons," Sarah said truthfully. She had learned that aliens defined weapons very differently than humans did. After processing through customs, Sarah found herself in the main concourse of Kepler's Rest. The space was vast, with ceilings that curved upward into artificial sky, displaying shifting patterns of light meant to be soothing to multiple species. Shops, restaurants, and service centers lined the walkways, with beings of all descriptions moving about their business. She had been walking for perhaps 10 minutes, following the signs toward the diplomatic quarter when the first scream echoed through the concourse. The sound was followed immediately by a thunderous roar that seemed to shake the station's superstructure. Emergency lights began flashing, and automated voices in multiple languages began broadcasting warnings. Attention all beings. Containment breach in Section 7. Please evacuate the area immediately. This is not a drill. Sarah stopped walking and assessed her surroundings. The other beings in the concourse were reacting with predictable panic, running in random directions, calling out to companions, seeking shelter behind counters and barriers. Through the chaos, she could see security teams moving toward Section 7, which appeared to be in the direction she had been heading. Another roar echoed through the station. This one closer. And Sarah felt the deck plates vibrate under her feet. Whatever had broken containment was large, angry, and moving fast. "This way! This way!" shouted a station security officer, a Chronothan like Captain Vexhigh, as he tried to direct fleeing civilians toward emergency exits. "Move away from Section 7. Sarah, however, began moving toward Section 7. "Hey!" the security officer called after her. "You're going the wrong way. The evacuation route is behind you." "I know," Sarah called back, not slowing down. As she moved closer to the source of the disturbance, the crowds thinned out until she was alone in the corridors. The emergency lighting cast strange shadows, and she could hear the sound of something large moving through the station's infrastructure, metal groaning, panels being torn away, and that thunderous roaring growing louder. She rounded a corner and came upon a scene of destruction. A massive hole had been torn in the wall of what appeared to be a research facility, with twisted metal and sparking circuits scattered across the corridor. Through the hole, she could see laboratories filled with specimen containers, many of them broken and empty. "Oh, that's not good," she murmured, recognizing the setup. Some xenobiologist had been keeping live specimens, and something had gotten loose. A security team was taking cover behind makeshift barriers, their energy weapons drawn but not firing. Sarah approached their position, noting that the team consisted of 5 Andromedians and 2 Vorthak, all looking terrified. "What's the situation?" she asked the team leader, a tall female Andromedian with lieutenant's stripes. "Civilian, you need to evacuate immediately," the lieutenant said without taking her eyes off the hole in the wall. "We have a containment breach of a Class X specimen." "Class X?" Sarah asked. "Apex predator from an uncharted world. The research team was studying its hunting patterns when it broke out of its containment field. It's already killed 3 security officers." As if summoned by their conversation, a massive form emerged from the hole in the wall. Sarah got her first look at what had the security team so terrified, and she had to admit it was impressive. The creature stood nearly 4 meters tall at the shoulder, with a body plan that seemed designed by evolution specifically for killing. It moved on 6 powerful legs, ending in claws that could apparently tear through station hull material. Its head was all teeth and sensory organs, with multiple eyes providing full spherical vision and a mouth that could probably bite a shuttlecraft in half. Armored plates covered its body, and bioluminescent patches along its flanks pulsed with angry red light. "Why aren't you shooting it?" Sarah asked. "Energy weapons just make it angrier," the lieutenant replied, sweat beading on her pale forehead. "Physical projectiles bounce off its armor. The research team said it was from a death world where everything is trying to kill everything else. It's adapted to survive almost any attack." The creature's multiple eyes focused on the security team's position, and it began moving toward them with a fluid grace that belied its massive size. Its claws left gouges in the deck, plating with each step. "Has anyone tried talking to it?" Sarah asked. The lieutenant looked at her as if she had suggested juggling plasma grenades. "Talking to it? It's a mindless killing machine." "Nothing that survives on a death world is mindless," Sarah said calmly. She studied the creature's approach, noting how it moved, how it positioned itself, how it used its sensory organs. "It's hunting you. Look at how it's cutting off your escape routes, forcing you into a corner where your superior numbers don't matter. That's intelligence." The creature was now close enough that they could hear its breathing, a sound like steam engines cycling. Its bioluminescent patches were pulsing faster, which Sarah suspected indicated increasing aggression or excitement. "Lieutenant," she said quietly, "I need you to have your team lower their weapons." "Are you insane?" the lieutenant hissed. "The moment we lower our weapons, it'll charge." "No," Sarah said, stepping out from behind the barrier. "It'll charge when it determines we're a threat. Right now, you're pointing weapons at it, which probably seems pretty threatening." "Get back here," the lieutenant called, but Sarah was already walking toward the creature. The massive predator immediately focused all its attention on her, its multiple eyes tracking her movement while its head lowered in what was clearly a threatening posture. The bioluminescent patches flared brighter, and it issued a rumbling growl that vibrated through the deck. Sarah stopped about 10 meters away from it and crouched down, making herself smaller and less threatening. Then she did something that would have seemed insane to any rational being. She began to speak to it. "Easy there, big guy," she said in a calm, steady voice. "I know you're scared. You woke up in a strange place, surrounded by strange smells and sounds, and now there are things pointing weapons at you. That's got to be terrifying." The creature's growling faltered slightly, its head tilting as if trying to understand the sound she was making. "You're a long way from home, aren't you?" Sarah continued, slowly reaching into her jacket. The security team behind her tensed, expecting her to pull out some hidden weapon, but instead she withdrew her water container and took a slow sip. "I know what that feels like. Being somewhere nothing makes sense, where everything seems like a potential threat." The creature's bioluminescent patches began pulsing slower, and its aggressive posture relaxed slightly. It was still alert and ready to attack, but it seemed curious about this small being that wasn't acting like prey or predator. "The thing is," Sarah said conversationally, "you and I have something in common. We're both apex predators from death worlds. I can see it in how you move, how you assess threats, how you position yourself. You're built for hunting, just like humans are." She slowly stood up, keeping her movements smooth and non-threatening. "But here's the difference between us," she continued, her voice taking on a different quality, something that made the security team behind her take an involuntary step backward. "You're adapted for one type of environment, one type of prey. You're perfect for your world, but this isn't your world." The creature seemed to sense the change in her tone, its own posture shifting as some deep instinct warned it that something had changed. "I'm adapted for any environment," Sarah said, and now her voice carried the absolute confidence of Earth's apex predator. "Any prey, any threat. That's what makes humans special. We don't just survive in our environment, we master it. And then we master every other environment we encounter." The creature took a step backward, its multiple eyes wide as it finally recognized what it was facing. Every instinct honed by millions of years of evolution on a death world was screaming warnings at it. "So here's what's going to happen," Sarah said, taking a step forward. The creature immediately took another step back, its bioluminescent patches now pulsing with what could only be described as fear. "You're going to walk back into that research facility. You're going to let the nice scientists figure out how to get you home. And you're going to do it because you're smart enough to recognize another apex predator when you see one." The standoff continued for another few seconds, with the massive alien predator staring down at the small human female who had somehow established dominance through nothing more than posture and voice. Then, slowly, the creature began to back away. "That's right," Sarah said encouragingly. "Nobody has to get hurt here. We're both reasonable predators. We can work this out." The creature continued backing up until it reached the hole in the wall, then turned and disappeared back into the research facility. The emergency lighting stopped flashing and the automated warnings fell silent. Sarah turned back to the security team who were staring at her with expressions of absolute shock. You might want to contact the research team, she said casually. Let them know their specimen is ready to cooperate, and maybe suggest they improve their containment procedures before studying any more apex predators. Lieutenant Carvanis found her voice first. How did you do that? We had energy weapons, armor, tactical training, and it was ready to tear us apart. You just talked to it. Sarah smiled, but this time it was a gentle expression, not the predatory one from the transport ship. I didn't talk to it, Lieutenant. I established pack hierarchy. That creature recognized me as the alpha predator, so it submitted. It's actually quite simple once you understand the psychology. But how could it possibly see you as more dangerous than us? Asked one of the Vorthak officers, his mandibles clicking with confusion. We had weapons, armor, numbers. And none of that mattered, Sarah said patiently. Because it wasn't looking at your weapons or your armor, it was looking at you. And what it saw was prey behavior. You were hiding, grouping together for protection, pointing your weapons defensively, classic prey responses. She gestured toward the research facility where the creature had disappeared. When it looked at me, it saw predator behavior. I approached instead of fleeing. I made myself visible instead of hiding. I spoke with confidence instead of fear. Most importantly, I wasn't afraid of it. You weren't afraid of that thing? Lieutenant Carvanis asked incredulously. Sarah considered the question seriously. No, not really. It was dangerous, certainly, and it could have killed me easily if things had gone wrong. But fear is a luxury that apex predators can't afford. The moment you show fear, you're no longer the hunter, you're the prey. The security team was still trying to process what they had witnessed when Captain Vexhai arrived with a full emergency response team. His scales immediately shifted to surprised purple when he saw Sarah standing calmly in the corridor while his security personnel looked like they had seen ghosts. Ms. Chen, he said carefully, what exactly happened here? Miscommunication, Sarah replied easily. The research specimen was confused and defensive. We sorted it out. Captain Vexhai looked at the massive hole torn in the wall, the gouges in the deck plating, and the traumatized expressions on his security team's faces. You sorted it out? Sometimes the old ways work best, Sarah said with a shrug. Apex predators understand each other, regardless of species. We just needed to establish who was who in the pack hierarchy. As if to punctuate her statement, a researcher, Dr. Yithmar, a Zeridian xenobiologist, emerged from the research facility looking stunned. Captain, he called out, the specimen has returned to its habitat voluntarily. It seems completely calm now. I've never seen anything like it. One moment it was in full predatory rage, and the next it was as docile as a domestic pet. Captain Vexhai's scales cycled through several colors as he processed this information. Dr. Yithmar, he said slowly, meet Sarah Chen. She's the human representative to the Galactic Council. Dr. Yithmar's large eyes grew even larger as he stared at Sarah. You're human? From Earth? When she nodded, he continued. Would you perhaps be willing to participate in our research? Your ability to communicate with apex predators could revolutionize our understanding of Deathworld ecosystems. Sarah considered the offer for a moment, then smiled. And this time, the security team was relieved to see it was the gentle smile, not the predatory one. I'd be happy to help, Doctor. But first, I should really check in with the diplomatic team. I'm supposed to be giving a presentation about human culture to the Galactic Council tomorrow. As they walked toward the diplomatic quarter, Dr. Yithmar peppered Sarah with questions about Earth's ecosystem and human hunting behaviors. Behind them, the security team was still trying to explain to Captain Vexhai how a creature that had killed 3 officers and resisted all their weapons had been subdued by a single unarmed human. She just looked at it, Lieutenant Carvanis kept saying. She looked at it and it backed down. I've never seen anything like it. Sarah, overhearing the conversation, thought about trying to explain that what they had witnessed wasn't actually unusual for humans. Throughout Earth's history, humans had been establishing dominance over apex predators through psychology, body language, and sheer force of will. The fact that it worked on alien predators was interesting, but not particularly surprising. But as she listened to the amazed conversations around her, she realized that explaining this to the galactic community might be more complicated than she had anticipated. These beings had evolved in safe environments where cooperation and technology had replaced the ancient dance between predator and prey. They had forgotten what it meant to be dangerous. Tomorrow's presentation to the Galactic Council was going to be very interesting indeed. The Grand Assembly Hall of Kepler's Rest was designed to accommodate representatives from 47 different species with environmental controls that could maintain dozens of different atmospheric requirements simultaneously. The curved amphitheater could hold nearly 1,000 beings, and today it was filled to capacity. Word of the previous day's incident had spread quickly through the station's communication networks. The story had grown in the telling. Some versions claimed that Sarah had fought a massive beast with her bare hands, others that she had somehow tamed it with mysterious human powers. By morning, every being on the station wanted to see the human who could make apex predators submit with a glance. Sarah stood in the presentation chamber, looking out at an audience that represented the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. She could see fear in many of their expressions, curiosity in others, and outright skepticism in a few. The Galactic Council's Xenocultural Committee sat in the front row, 12 beings from different species, all of whom had spent their careers studying primitive cultures and extinct predators. Councillor Thex Nara, the Andromedian who chaired the committee, rose to address the assembly. "Honored beings," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the hall's acoustic systems, "we gather today to hear from Sarah Chen, representative of the species known as humans from the planet Earth. As you may have heard, yesterday's events have raised many questions about human capabilities and their place in our galactic community." A ripple of whispers ran through the audience. Sarah noticed that several beings in the back rows were recording the session, probably for their home governments. "Ms. Chen has graciously agreed to address these concerns and provide insight into human culture and evolution," Councillor Thex Nara continued. "I ask that you listen with open minds and reserve your questions until the end of the presentation." The councillor resumed her seat, and Sarah stepped forward to the central platform. The hall fell completely silent. "Thank you, Councillor," Sarah began, her voice calm and confident. "I want to start by addressing what happened yesterday, because I know many of you have heard various versions of the story." She gestured to a large display screen that showed security footage from the incident. "Yesterday, I encountered a specimen that had escaped from Dr. Yithmar's research facility. This creature was described as a Class X apex predator from an uncharted death world. The security team was unable to contain it using standard procedures, and 3 officers had already been killed. The footage showed the massive alien predator tearing through the station's corridors, then Sarah's approach and the subsequent confrontation. Several beings in the audience shifted nervously as they watched the small human walk directly toward the obviously dangerous creature. "I was able to resolve the situation without violence by establishing what humans call pack hierarchy," Sarah continued, as the footage showed the creature backing down and retreating. "This isn't magic or some mysterious human power. It's psychology. It's understanding how apex predators think and communicate." Dr. Quintal, who was seated in the third row, raised his hand tentatively. "Ms. Chen, forgive me for interrupting, but could you explain how you were able to intimidate a creature that was 3 times your size and armed with natural weapons that could tear through hull plating?" Sarah smiled, and several beings in the front rows involuntarily leaned back. "Doctor, you're still thinking about this wrong. Size doesn't determine who's apex predator. Weapons don't determine who's the apex predator. What determines apex predator status is the willingness and ability to kill anything that threatens you or your pack. She moved to stand directly in front of the council members. Every species in this room evolved on worlds where cooperation was advantageous, where working together led to survival and eventual technological advancement. You learned to avoid conflict, to find peaceful solutions, to use intelligence instead of violence. These are admirable traits that have allowed your civilizations to flourish. The audience was listening intently now, sensing that she was building toward something important. But Earth didn't work that way. On Earth, everything was trying to kill everything else. The only way to survive was to become better at killing than anything else on the planet. So that's what humans did. Sarah activated another display, this one showing images from Earth. Forests, oceans, deserts, Arctic wasteland. These are just some of Earth's environments. Each one is filled with creatures specifically evolved to kill. In our forests, we have predators that hunt from the ground, from the trees, and from the air. Our oceans contain predators ranging from microscopic parasites to creatures larger than your shuttlecraft. Our deserts have evolved killing machines that can go months without food or water while waiting for prey. The images shifted to show various Earth predators: great whites, polar bears, tigers, eagles, wolves, crocodiles. And in the middle of all this, Sarah continued, humans not only survived, but thrived. We didn't do it by being bigger or stronger or faster than these creatures. We did it by being more ruthless. Counselor Vector, a Melonian, spoke up from the front row. Surely you mean more intelligent? Humans developed technology, tools, weapons. No, Counselor, Sarah said firmly. Intelligence helped. But what really made the difference was our willingness to commit to a fight. Let me give you an example. A new image appeared on the screen. Cave paintings showing primitive humans hunting massive creatures. These are paintings from approximately 30,000 years ago, created by humans who had no metal tools, no advanced weapons, no vehicles. They show humans hunting mammoths, creatures that stood 4 meters tall and weighed as much as your shuttlecraft. The humans were using sharpened sticks and rocks. The audience stared at the primitive artwork, trying to comprehend the implications. How did they do it? Sarah asked rhetorically. By being willing to die to make the kill. Human hunting parties would track a mammoth for days, wearing it down, attacking it repeatedly until it was weakened. Then they would surround it and attack from all sides, accepting that some of them would be killed in the process. They were willing to sacrifice pack members to bring down prey. A shocked silence filled the hall. The concept of deliberately accepting casualties to achieve a goal was alien to most of the species present. That's the difference between humans and every other species in this galaxy, Sarah continued. You fight to defend or to protect or to drive off threats. Humans fight to win, regardless of cost. Dr. Yithmar, the researcher whose specimen Sarah had encountered, raised his hand. Ms. Chen, are you suggesting that humans are inherently violent because your species has developed art, literature, philosophy, all the hallmarks of advanced civilization? Sarah's expression softened slightly. Dr. Yithmar, I'm not suggesting humans are inherently violent. I'm explaining that humans are inherently determined. The same drive that made our ancestors hunt mammoths with sticks is the same drive that built our cities, explored our planet, and eventually reached for the stars. She gestured toward the viewing ports where stars were visible in the distance. When humans encounter a problem, we don't look for ways around it. We look for ways through it. When we encounter something that seems impossible, we don't accept that it's impossible. We figure out how to make it possible. That's what apex predators do. They find a way to make the kill, no matter what obstacles they face. Counselor Thexanara leaned forward. But surely this... Determination has negative aspects. The reports from your planet mention wars, environmental destruction, conflicts. You're absolutely right, Sarah acknowledged. The same traits that made humans successful hunters also made us effective at killing each other. Human history is filled with conflicts, wars, and destruction. We've driven species to extinction, poisoned our own environment, and created weapons capable of destroying our entire planet. The audience began to murmur among themselves, and Sarah could see fear creeping back into their expressions. But here's what's important to understand, she continued, raising her voice slightly to regain their attention. We learned from our mistakes. The same determination that made us dangerous predators also made us determined to become better than our worst impulses. A new series of images appeared on the screen: human cities, art, technology, space exploration. Modern humans have channeled our hunting instincts into other pursuits. We hunt knowledge. We hunt solutions to problems. We hunt ways to improve ourselves and our world. We've learned to cooperate on a global scale, to think beyond immediate survival, to consider the long-term consequences of our actions. She paused and looked directly at the council members. But make no mistake, the underlying nature is still there. When threatened, when cornered, when protecting something we care about, humans can become the same relentless predators our ancestors were. The difference is that we now choose when to be predators. Ambassador Krelvox, a tall Zeridian diplomat, stood up. Ms. Chen, with respect, why should the galactic community not be concerned about having apex predators as neighbors? What assurance do we have that humans won't turn their predatory nature against other species? Sarah had been expecting this question, and she answered without hesitation. Ambassador, humans have been living with apex predators for thousands of years. We've learned to coexist with creatures that could kill us easily: sharks, lions, bears, wolves. We've learned that the key to peaceful coexistence is mutual respect and understanding of boundaries. She gestured toward the audience. The species in this room represent the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. You've built incredible technologies, created beautiful art, developed sophisticated philosophies. Humans respect that achievement, and we want to be part of it. But what if there's a conflict? Asked Dr. Quintal. What if human interests clash with galactic interests? Sarah's expression grew serious. Doctor, apex predators are very practical. We don't fight unless we have to, because fighting is expensive and dangerous. Humans would much rather trade with the galactic community, learn from you, share our own knowledge and culture. Conflict would benefit nobody. She paused, then continued in a quieter voice that somehow carried clearly through the hall. However, if humans were threatened with extinction, if our planet were attacked, if our people were in danger, then yes, we would respond as apex predators. We would fight with everything we have, using every advantage we could find, and we would not stop until the threat was eliminated. The absolute certainty in her voice sent chills through the audience. Here was a being calmly explaining that her species would go to war against the entire galaxy if necessary, and would probably win. But that's a worst-case scenario, Sarah added, her tone returning to normal. And it's easily avoided through the same methods that have allowed humans to coexist with Earth's apex predators: respect, communication, and understanding. Counselor Thexnera stood up. Ms. Chen, you mentioned that humans have learned to channel their predatory instincts into other pursuits. Could you elaborate on this? Sarah smiled, and this time it was clearly the friendly version. Certainly, Counselor. Human determination has driven us to incredible achievements. We've eliminated diseases that killed millions of our people. We've explored every environment on our planet, from the deepest ocean trenches to the highest mountains. We've sent probes to every planet in our solar system and beyond. New images appeared on the screen. human achievements in science, medicine, exploration, art. When humans encounter a problem that seems impossible to solve, we don't give up. We keep working at it, trying new approaches, building on failures until we find a solution. The same relentlessness that made us successful hunters makes us successful scientists, engineers, artists, and explorers. She gestured toward the advanced technology visible throughout the station. Your species have achieved incredible things through cooperation and gradual advancement. Humans achieve things through sheer bloody-minded determination to succeed. Both approaches have value, and I believe the galaxy would benefit from having both available. Dr. Yithmar raised his hand again. Ms. Chen, yesterday you mentioned that humans hunt for sport, for trophies, for entertainment. How does this fit with your description of humans as evolved and civilized? Sarah paused thoughtfully before answering. Doctor, that's one of the aspects of human nature that we're still working on. Some humans do still engage in hunting for sport, though it's much less common than it was in our past. Most modern humans prefer to hunt challenges, intellectual puzzles, extreme sports, competitive games. She smiled wryly. You have to understand, the drive to hunt is deeply ingrained in human psychology. We need challenges to overcome, goals to pursue, competitions to win. If we don't have productive outlets for those drives, they can become destructive. So humans require challenges? Asked Counselor Vector. In a way, yes, Sarah confirmed. Humans who don't have meaningful challenges often become depressed, anxious, or engage in destructive behaviors. We need something to pursue, something to achieve, something that requires effort and determination. She looked around the audience. That's one of the reasons humans are so interested in joining the galactic community. You represent the ultimate challenge, learning about dozens of new species, exploring new worlds, solving problems on a galactic scale. It's exactly the kind of challenge that brings out the best in human nature. Ambassador Krelvox spoke up again. What if humans become bored with galactic challenges? What if you decide the galaxy itself needs to be hunted? The question hung in the air like a physical presence, and Sarah could feel the tension in the room spike dramatically. Ambassador, she said carefully, that's like asking what would happen if sharks decided to hunt the ocean itself. Apex predators don't destroy their environment. They protect it because they depend on it for survival. She gestured toward the viewing ports again. The galaxy is vast, full of mysteries to explore, problems to solve, knowledge to discover. It would take humans thousands of years to fully explore just the systems we know about, let alone the unknown regions. We'll never run out of challenges here. The questioning continued for another hour, with representatives from various species asking about human history, psychology, technology, and intentions. Sarah answered each question honestly, neither downplaying human capabilities nor trying to make them seem more threatening than they were. Finally, Counselor Thexanara called for a recess so the council could deliberate. As the audience filed out, many of the beings cast nervous glances back at Sarah, while others seemed thoughtful or even curious. Dr. Quintal approached her as she gathered her materials. Ms. Chen, he said, I want to thank you for your candor. Your presentation was illuminating. I hope it was helpful, Doctor. I know this is a lot for your people to process. Indeed. May I ask you a personal question? Sarah nodded. Yesterday, when you faced that creature, were you really not afraid? Sarah considered the question carefully. I was concerned about the outcome, Doctor. Fear would have been counterproductive. But if you're asking whether I felt the physiological response that most species call fear, elevated heart rate, stress hormones, fight-or-flight instinct, then yes, I experienced all of that. Then how did you appear so calm? Sarah smiled. Because, Doctor, feeling afraid and being controlled by fear are two different things. Humans learned long ago that the predator who can think clearly under pressure is the predator who survives. When the council reconvened an hour later, Councillor Thexanera stood to address the assembly. After deliberation, the council has decided to recommend that humanity be granted provisional membership in the galactic community, with full membership to be considered after a probationary period of 1 standard year. A buzz of conversation filled the hall. Some beings seemed relieved, others concerned, many simply uncertain. However, the counselor continued, we do have some conditions. First, human expansion must be gradual and monitored. Second, all human colonies must be registered with the Galactic Authority. Third, humans must agree to mediation procedures for resolving conflicts with other species. Sarah stood to respond. Counselor, on behalf of humanity, I accept these conditions. We understand the galaxy's concerns, and we're willing to prove ourselves worthy neighbors. As the formal session concluded and beings began to leave the hall, Sarah reflected on what had been accomplished. The galaxy now knew what humans were capable of, both the positive and negative aspects. They had been warned, but also invited to participate. Dr. Yithmar approached her one final time. Ms. Chen, I have a research proposal. Would humanity be interested in participating in a joint study of Death World ecosystems? Your insights could help us understand how to better protect endangered predator species throughout the galaxy. Sarah's face lit up with genuine enthusiasm. Doctor, that sounds like exactly the kind of challenge that would fascinate human researchers. I'm sure we could arrange something. As she walked back toward her quarters, Sarah reflected on the irony of the situation. Humanity had been accepted into the galactic community not despite being apex predators, but because of it. The galaxy needed what humans could offer: determination, resourcefulness, the willingness to tackle impossible challenges. She paused at an observation deck and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there were dozens of civilizations, hundreds of worlds, countless opportunities for exploration and discovery. It was everything humans had dreamed of when they first looked up at the night sky and wondered what was out there. And now, they would find out. Sarah smiled, the genuine, friendly expression that she reserved for moments of pure happiness, and continued on her way. Tomorrow she would begin the long journey home to Earth, carrying news that would change human history forever. Behind her, in the Grand Assembly Hall, maintenance crews were already cleaning up. But the conversations that had started there would continue for months, as species throughout the galaxy tried to understand what it meant to have apex predators as neighbors. And in research facilities across known space, xenobiologists were already planning expeditions to death worlds, hoping to understand the ecosystems that had forged the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. The age of humanity in the galactic community had begun.